Have you ever woken up and felt like the life you're living isn't truly your own? That every decision, every sacrifice, every expectation you've fulfilled was shaped by others, by society, by family, by fear? Yet, deep within, there has always been a quiet voice urging you towards something more, something authentic. In Buddhism, the path to true liberation begins with self-awareness. The Buddha taught that suffering arises when we cling to identities, roles, and expectations that are not truly ours. To find peace, we must have the courage to look within, to break free from attachments, and to walk our own path with mindfulness and wisdom. Today, we'll explore what happens when you finally choose yourself, when you let go of external burdens and embrace your true nature. It's not an easy journey, but once you take it, nothing will ever be the same. Before we begin, if you find value in these insights, be sure to like this video, subscribe to Buddhist Mindfulness, and share this message with someone who needs it. Now let's begin. Part 1. The burden of living for others. For years, you've been conditioned to believe that seeking approval is the key to happiness. From childhood, you were taught to meet expectations, be a good student, a responsible employee, a dutiful son or daughter. Society has dictated what success should look like, and in trying to conform, you have neglected the most important person of all, yourself. Let's take the example of Sarah. She was always the good girl, the one who never said no, who always prioritized others over herself. She worked tirelessly at a job she didn't love, stayed in a relationship that drained her energy, and ignored her own passions, until one day she broke down. The weight of pleasing everyone had crushed her spirit. Her breaking point was an ordinary morning when she looked in the mirror and realized she didn't recognize herself. It was the moment she understood. She had lived for everyone except herself. And that realization changed everything. Sarah's story is not unique. Many of us carry the burden of expectations from family, friends, employers, and society at large. We are told that success means financial stability, marriage, children, and a secure job. But what if our personal happiness doesn't fit neatly into these expectations? The pressure to meet societal norms can be overwhelming. Parents want their children to excel academically and professionally, but often steering them toward careers that promise financial security but may not align with their passions. Friends expect a certain level of social engagement, and partners may unconsciously impose their own expectations. The cycle is endless. Living for others comes at a great cost. It can drain your mental, emotional, and even physical well-being. Constantly seeking validation leads to stress, anxiety, and even depression. Over time, the disconnect between your true desires and the life you are living becomes unbearable. Emotional exhaustion. Trying to be everything to everyone leaves little energy for yourself. You give and give until there's nothing left. Loss of identity. When your choices are dictated by external approval, you lose touch with who you really are. Your dreams, desires, and values become secondary. Unfulfilled potential. Living for others often means shelving your own aspirations. You may find yourself in a career that doesn't excite you, in relationships that don't nurture you, and in a life that doesn't fulfill you. Why do we do it? The desire to please others is deeply ingrained. As children, we sought approval from parents and teachers. Praise made us feel valued, while criticism felt like rejection. Over time, this approval-seeking behavior became habitual. Fear of disappointment. Many of us fear letting people down. We don't want to disappoint our parents, upset our friends, or be seen as selfish. Cultural conditioning. Some cultures emphasize collectivism, where the needs of the group are prioritized over the individual. This can make personal desires feel secondary or even shameful. Validation as self-worth. If our self-worth is tied to external approval, we become dependent on it. A lack of validation feels like failure. How do you know if you are living for others? Some common signs include constantly seeking approval before making decisions, feeling guilty when prioritizing your own needs, suppressing your opinions to avoid conflict, staying in situations that make you unhappy out of obligation, feeling exhausted and unfulfilled despite having a successful life. Realizing that you have been living for others is painful, but it is also the first step toward change. Here's how you can reclaim your life. 1. Self-reflection. Take time to reflect on your life choices. Ask yourself, are the decisions I make truly mine, Or am I influenced by external expectations? What would I do if I wasn't afraid of disappointing others? When was the last time I felt truly happy and fulfilled? Journaling can be a powerful tool in this process. Write down your thoughts, fears, and desires. Seeing them on paper can help clarify what truly matters to you. 2. Setting boundaries. Learning to say no is crucial. If Sarah had learned this earlier, she wouldn't have reached her breaking point. Boundaries protect your mental and emotional well-being. At work, don't take on more than you can handle. Your job is not your entire identity. With family, it's okay to disagree and make choices that are best for you. In relationships, if a friendship or romantic relationship drains you, reconsider its place in your life. 3. Embracing your true self. Start rediscovering what brings you joy. What are your passions? What excites you? What makes you feel alive? Explore new hobbies or revisit old ones. Surround yourself with people who encourage your individuality. Take small steps toward your dreams, whether that means changing careers, traveling, or simply allowing yourself to rest without guilt. 4. Redefining success. Success should be personal, not societal. Define what success means for you. Is it financial stability or creative fulfillment? Is it a big house or the freedom to travel? Is it marriage and children or a life of independence? No definition is right or wrong. It's about what aligns with your heart. 5. Letting go of guilt. Guilt is a major obstacle to living authentically. But remember, prioritizing yourself is not selfish. It's necessary. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Taking care of your needs allows you to show up better for others, not less. Returning to Sarah's story, after her realization, she made changes. She left the draining relationship, pursued a career aligned with her passions, and learned to say no. It wasn't easy. She faced resistance, guilt, and self-doubt. But over time, she found a new kind of happiness, one that came from within rather than from external approval. Sarah's journey is a reminder that change is possible. You don't have to live under the weight of expectations forever. You have the power to redefine your life on your own terms. Living for others may feel like the safest path, but it is not the most fulfilling one. It takes courage to break free from societal expectations and reclaim your identity. But once you do, you will discover a life that is truly yours, one filled with authenticity, joy, and self-respect. If you see yourself in Sarah's story, take this as a sign. It's time to put yourself first, not because you don't care about others, but because you finally care about yourself. Part 2, the fear of choosing yourself. The Buddha taught that suffering comes from attachment to validation, to expectations, to the fear of disappointing others. But why is it so terrifying to choose yourself? The answer lies in fear. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of being labeled as selfish. When you start prioritizing yourself, people around you may react negatively. They've been accustomed to your compliance. Your transformation disrupts their reality. Mark, a middle-aged businessman, spent years building an empire, but at the cost of his mental and physical health. He was always available, always sacrificing personal time for work. The day he decided to step back, people called him reckless. But in truth, for the first time, he was reclaiming his life. The Buddha once said, "No one saves us but ourselves. No one can and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path." And yet, many resist this truth because it means stepping into the unknown. Society teaches us that self-sacrifice is virtuous. We are praised for putting others first, for being dependable, for enduring hardships silently. But at what cost? The moment you prioritize yourself, the same society that once praised your dedication may brand you as ungrateful or selfish. Consider the story of Priya, a young woman who spent years fulfilling her family's expectations. She pursued a career she didn't love, married someone she wasn't sure about, and lived a life dictated by duty. One day, she decided to leave her high-paying corporate job to pursue art. Her family was outraged. How could she throw away security for something so uncertain? But for Priya, it was the first time she felt truly alive. Choosing yourself is not selfish, it is necessary. There is a fundamental difference between being selfish and practicing self-love. Selfishness disregards others, but self-love ensures you have the energy to give authentically. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Parents, caregivers, employees, and leaders often feel an unspoken obligation to put themselves last. They convince themselves that taking time for self-care, for rest, or for personal growth is indulgent. But consider this: a burned out parent cannot nurture effectively, a depleted leader cannot inspire, a tired soul cannot love deeply. Choosing yourself often means walking a lonely path. Not everyone will understand, and some may even resist your change. When you set boundaries, some people may see it as rejection. When you say no, others may take offense. This is the price of authenticity. But solitude is not loneliness. The Buddha found enlightenment alone under the Bodhi tree. Great thinkers, spiritual leaders, and changemakers often walk solitary paths because true transformation happens within. It is in the quiet moments of self-reflection that we discover our true selves. Fear thrives on uncertainty. The mind clings to the familiar, even if it is unhealthy. When you choose yourself, you step into the unknown. You may not have all the answers, you may stumble, but in that uncertainty lies freedom. Imagine a bird that has lived its whole life in a cage. One day, the door is left open. The bird hesitates. The outside world is vast, unfamiliar. Freedom is both exhilarating and terrifying. This is the paradox of choosing yourself. It is the ultimate liberation, yet it requires courage to embrace. Practical steps to choosing yourself. 1. Recognize your fear. Acknowledge the fear that holds you back. Is it the fear of disappointing others, the fear of failing? Naming your fear is the first step in overcoming it. 2. Set boundaries. Learn to say no without guilt. Boundaries are essential for self-respect and mental well-being. 3. Redefine success. Success is not just external achievements, it is inner peace, joy, and fulfillment. 4. Find your tribe. Surround yourself with people who support your growth rather than those who hold you back. 5. Practice mindfulness. The present moment is all we have. Mindfulness helps ground you in your truth rather than external expectations. 6. Embrace discomfort. Growth happens outside your comfort zone. Discomfort is a sign that you are evolving. At the end of our lives, we do not regret choosing ourselves. We regret the moments we lived for others at the expense of our own souls. The Buddha did not seek enlightenment to please society. He sought it to end suffering, for himself and for others. When you choose yourself, you inspire others to do the same. You become a light for those trapped in fear. You show that authenticity is possible, that joy is attainable, and that living a life true to oneself is the greatest act of courage. So the question remains, will you choose yourself? Part 3, the moment of transformation. Choosing yourself is not a singular event, it's a process. It is an ongoing, evolving journey of self-discovery where you peel away the layers of societal conditioning, past traumas, and limiting beliefs to uncover your authentic self. This transformation does not happen overnight. It unfolds through a series of choices, moments of courage, and deep inner work. Often, this journey is marked by 3 pivotal shifts. 1. Setting boundaries, honoring your energy and well-being. At some point, you realize that your time, energy, and emotional well-being are finite resources. Setting boundaries means recognizing what drains you and making the conscious choice to say no. This is not an act of selfishness, but an act of self-respect and self-preservation. Many people struggle with boundaries because they have been conditioned to believe that prioritizing their own needs is wrong. They may feel guilty for declining invitations, resisting obligations, or disengaging from conversations that bring them stress. However, true transformation begins when you understand that setting limits is a form of self-love. For example, imagine Sarah, a compassionate and giving person who always put others before herself. She used to say yes to every request, often at the cost of her own well-being. But when she started setting firm yet kind boundaries, she noticed a shift in her relationships. Some people resented her newfound assertiveness, but others respected her more. Most importantly, Sarah felt lighter, more in control of her life, and deeply aligned with her true self. Number 2, letting go of toxic people. Releasing what no longer serves you. Letting go of unhealthy relationships is one of the most difficult yet necessary steps in the journey of transformation. Toxic people drain your energy, cloud your judgment, and keep you from growing into your highest self. These individuals can be overly critical, manipulative, controlling, or unsupportive. The more you evolve, the clearer it becomes that not everyone is meant to stay in your life. Releasing toxic relationships does not always mean confrontation or hostility. Sometimes it is simply about creating distance, reducing interaction, or shifting the dynamic. Take Michael, for example. He had a childhood friend who constantly belittled his dreams and dismissed his aspirations. Every time Michael shared something meaningful, his friend would respond with sarcasm or negativity. When Michael decided to step into his power, he chose to stop seeking validation from this friend. He still wished him well, but he no longer allowed his words to dictate his choices. When you start letting go of toxic influences, you create space for healthier, more fulfilling relationships. You begin to attract people who uplift you, inspire you, and support your journey. 3. Embracing your true desires, reconnecting with what sets your soul on fire. One of the most profound transformations occurs when you give yourself permission to pursue what truly excites and fulfills you. Often, our deepest desires are buried under years of conditioning, fear, and self-doubt. We tell ourselves that certain dreams are impractical, unrealistic, or unattainable. But in reality, these desires are clues to our purpose. Buddhism speaks of dharma, the natural path that aligns with our soul's calling. When we honor our true selves, the universe responds in kind, supporting us in ways we never expected. Consider Lisa, an artist who had spent years suppressing her creative instincts. She pursued a practical career by one that society deemed stable, but it left her unfulfilled. The day she finally chose to embrace her passion, everything began to shift. She met a mentor who guided her, stumbled upon an art grant, and found herself in an environment that nurtured her creativity. Was it mere coincidence, or was it dharma at work? When we step into alignment with our true desires, life flows more effortlessly. We experience synchronicities, chance encounters, and opportunities that seem almost magical. The right people, resources, and circumstances appear at the perfect moment, guiding us toward our highest potential. Choosing yourself is not always easy. There will be resistance, both from within and from those around you. Your own mind may generate doubts, telling you that change is risky or that it is safer to remain in familiar patterns. Others may question your choices, accuse you of changing, or attempt to pull you back into old dynamics. But transformation requires courage. It requires trusting yourself, even when the path ahead is uncertain. It means understanding that discomfort is part of growth. Like a butterfly emerging from its cocoon, you may feel confined, unsure, or even afraid at times. But when you push through, you discover wings you never knew you had. The beauty of transformation is that it is not a destination, but a way of being. When you begin living in alignment with your authentic self, life feels more harmonious. You make decisions based on your inner truth rather than external expectations. You trust the natural flow of life and embrace change with an open heart. Practices such as meditation, mindfulness, and self-reflection can help you stay connected to this path. Surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals, seeking guidance from mentors, and continuously exploring your inner world can further strengthen your commitment to authenticity. Transformation is not something that happens one day in the future. It happens the moment you choose yourself. Every decision to set a boundary, let go of negativity, and pursue your true desires is a step toward a more fulfilling and meaningful life. As you walk this path, remember that you are not alone. The universe is always conspiring in your favor, guiding you toward your highest good. And most importantly, every moment holds the potential for change. The moment of transformation is not tomorrow or someday, it is now. Part 4, the challenge of loneliness. Choosing yourself often means walking alone for a while. It can feel isolating when you break away from old patterns and people who don't align with your journey. But solitude is not a punishment. It is a sacred space for self-discovery. The Buddha warned that many people avoid this solitude because it forces them to confront their deepest fears. But within this silence lies transformation. Take Robert, for example. After leaving a toxic marriage and distancing himself from draining friendships, he found himself alone for the first time in years. At first, the loneliness was unbearable, but as time passed, he discovered peace in his own presence. He rekindled his love for music, spent time in nature, and slowly built a life that felt genuinely fulfilling. This is a common experience for those who embrace solitude. Initially, the silence feels heavy, even painful. It brings forth emotions that were previously buried under the noise of daily life, regrets, insecurities, and unprocessed grief. However, these moments of stillness provide the perfect opportunity for healing and self-exploration. Solitude allows you to truly know yourself. When you are constantly surrounded by others, their opinions and expectations influence your thoughts and decisions. But when you are alone, you can listen to your own voice without external interference. You start to understand your desires, values, and what genuinely brings you joy. Many fear loneliness because they equate it with rejection or inadequacy. Society often portrays being alone as undesirable, as if solitude is something to be avoided at all costs. This mindset leads people to stay in unhealthy relationships, forcing themselves to tolerate toxic behaviors simply to avoid being alone. However, loneliness is not the enemy. It is a teacher. It shows you where you have relied too much on external validation. It reveals the areas of your life that need attention and self-love. When you shift your perspective and see loneliness as an invitation to grow rather than a burden to bear, you begin to reclaim your power. Buddhist teachings emphasize the importance of solitude in deepening one's spiritual path. The Buddha himself spent long periods in solitude, meditating and seeking enlightenment. He understood that true wisdom arises when the mind is quiet and free from distractions. Practicing solitude does not mean isolating yourself permanently or rejecting social connections. It means learning to be at peace with your own company so that relationships become an addition to your happiness rather than a necessity for it. When you are content on your own, you attract healthier, more fulfilling relationships because you are no longer seeking companionship from a place of neediness or fear. If you find yourself struggling with loneliness, consider these practices to help you embrace solitude. 1. Mindful meditation. Spend a few minutes each day in silence, simply observing your breath and thoughts. This practice helps you become more comfortable with stillness and inner reflection. 2. Engage in creative pursuits. Whether it's painting, writing, playing an instrument, or crafting, creative activities provide a healthy outlet for self-expression and self-discovery. 3. Connect with nature. Spend time outdoors, whether it's walking in a park, hiking in the mountains, or simply sitting by a river. Nature has a way of grounding us and reminding us of the beauty in solitude. 4. Journaling. Writing down your thoughts, emotions, and reflections can be a powerful tool for processing feelings of loneliness and gaining clarity about your journey. 5. Develop a daily routine. Structure your days with meaningful activities, such as exercise, reading, or learning something new. Having a sense of purpose reduces the feeling of emptiness that often accompanies loneliness. 6. Practice self-compassion. Be kind to yourself during this period of transition. Understand that feeling lonely does not mean something is wrong with you. It is simply part of the human experience. 7. Seek meaningful connections. While solitude is valuable, it does not mean you have to be completely alone. Engage in activities that align with your interests and values, where you can meet like-minded individuals who uplift and inspire you. Over time, what once felt like unbearable loneliness transforms into a deep, unshakable sense of peace. You begin to appreciate your own presence, finding comfort in your thoughts and experiences. The need for external validation diminishes, and you become more selective about the relationships you invite into your life. Loneliness, when embraced, becomes a powerful teacher. It teaches you resilience, self-sufficiency, and emotional independence. It grants you the space to heal, grow, and evolve into the person you were meant to be. The challenge of loneliness is not about escaping it, but learning to sit with it, to understand it, and to use it as a catalyst for transformation. When you can be alone and truly enjoy your own company, you unlock a freedom that no external circumstance can take away. Part 5, the power of self-validation. One of the most liberating realizations in life is that you do not need external validation. Society conditions us to seek approval through achievements, relationships, social media, and material success. We are taught from a young age to measure our worth by how others perceive us. We chase praise, recognition, and affirmation, believing that our value depends on external validation. But true contentment does not come from the outside world. It arises from within. Many people spend their lives seeking approval from others, often without realizing it. We post on social media hoping for likes, we work tirelessly to earn promotions and accolades, and we modify our behavior to fit into societal norms, all in an attempt to feel valued. But the problem with external validation is that it is fleeting. Consider the analogy of a cup with a hole at the bottom. No matter how much you pour into it, praise, compliments, success, it will never stay full. External validation is like that. It provides temporary satisfaction, but does not create lasting self-worth. As soon as the applause fades, the feelings of inadequacy return. Buddhist teachings emphasize that happiness is not found in external things, but in the peace that comes from within. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha teaches that true joy comes not from wealth or status, but from self-mastery and inner wisdom. When we attach our sense of worth to external validation, we suffer because all external things are impermanent. Let's take the example of Julia, a young woman who spent years obsessing over social media validation. Every post, every comment, every like dictated her self-worth. If a post received many likes, she felt confident and happy. If it didn't, she felt insecure and doubted herself. This cycle of external validation became an emotional roller coaster. It wasn't until Julia stepped away from social media that she realized she had been seeking love and affirmation in all the wrong places. She had been measuring her self-worth based on how others responded to her, rather than how she felt about herself. Her transformation came when she started living for herself, not for the approval of others. Julia's story is not unique. Many people experience this struggle. The key to breaking free is self-awareness and a shift in perspective. The first step to self-validation is recognizing when we are seeking external approval and asking ourselves, why do I need this validation? What am I truly seeking? Self-validation means acknowledging your own worth without needing others to confirm it. It is about recognizing your feelings, accomplishments, and experiences as valid, independent of external approval. Here's how you can cultivate self-validation. 1. Acknowledge your own feelings. Your emotions are valid, regardless of how others perceive them. If you feel hurt, sad, excited, or joyful, allow yourself to experience these feelings without seeking external confirmation. 2. Define your own success. Society often dictates what success looks like: wealth, status, relationships. But true success is deeply personal. Define what success means to you, whether it's inner peace, personal growth, or meaningful relationships. 3. Practice self-compassion. We are often our own worst critics. Instead of harsh self-judgment, practice self-compassion. Treat yourself with the same kindness you would offer a friend. 4. Detach from external opinions. People will always have opinions, but their perspectives do not define you. Accept that you cannot control what others think, but you can control how you respond. 5. Develop mindfulness and meditation practices. Meditation helps cultivate inner peace by bringing awareness to the present moment. It teaches you to observe your thoughts without attachment and reinforces the understanding that self-worth is found within, not outside of you. 6. Recognize impermanence. Buddhist philosophy teaches that all things are impermanent. The praise you receive today may disappear tomorrow. The criticism you face now will fade. Understanding impermanence helps you detach from the highs and lows of external validation. 7. Celebrate your achievements internally. When you accomplish something, take a moment to acknowledge it for yourself. You do not need others to recognize your efforts for them to be meaningful. Celebrate your small victories, whether or not anyone else sees them. When you stop relying on external validation, you unlock a profound sense of freedom. No longer bound by the opinions of others, you begin to live authentically. You make decisions based on what aligns with your values and passions, rather than what will earn approval. Consider how much energy is spent worrying about what others think. Imagine reclaiming that energy and redirecting it toward personal growth, creativity, and self-fulfillment. When you validate yourself, you are no longer dependent on the shifting tides of external opinions. You become your own source of confidence and joy. This does not mean disregarding constructive feedback or isolating yourself from others. Instead, it means filtering feedback through your own self-awareness, taking in what is helpful, and letting go of what is not. It means listening to your inner voice and trusting your own judgment. The journey to self-validation is not always easy, but it is deeply rewarding. When you stop seeking approval from the outside world and turn inward, you discover an unshakable foundation of self worth. Buddhism teaches us that suffering arises from attachment to praise, to success, to validation. Letting go of these attachments allows us to experience true inner peace. When you validate yourself, you free yourself from the endless pursuit of external affirmation and instead find contentment in simply being. So ask yourself today, what if you were already enough, just as you are? Embrace that truth and watch how your world transforms. Choosing yourself is not an act of selfishness, it is an act of deep wisdom. It is the realization that you cannot pour from an empty cup, that true compassion and love for others can only arise when you first cultivate them within yourself. The Buddha taught that attachment to external validation leads to suffering, while looking inward brings clarity and peace. Only by honoring your own needs, values, and aspirations can you step onto the path of authentic living. Take a moment to reflect. What aspects of your life have you been neglecting in order to please others? What dreams have you sacrificed out of fear or obligation? The answers to these questions hold the key to your liberation. When you choose yourself, you reclaim your power. You begin to walk with purpose, guided by your own truth rather than external expectations. If this message resonates with you, let it be a gentle reminder to prioritize your well-being and inner peace. The time to act is now. If this video has inspired you, please like, subscribe to Buddhist Mindfulness, and share this message with someone who needs to hear it. Your journey to self-discovery and spiritual awakening begins today.